For nearly 3 hours on live national radio, the future King of England charmed 4 million people, talked about football, fingerprints, and his favorite running song, and never once said his brother's name. Not once. Not even close. And if you know how this family actually communicates, that silence was the loudest thing William has said in years. Let me paint you a picture, because the setting here matters more than most people are giving it credit for. Last Friday morning, Prince William, the Prince of Wales, the future King of the United Kingdom and 15 Commonwealth realms, walked into a seaside cafe on the Isles of Scilly. Not Buckingham Palace, not a state dinner, not a prepared podium with a press secretary standing 3 feet to his left. A cafe on a tiny island cluster off the coast of Cornwall that most Americans have never heard of, and honestly sounds like something out of a Richard Curtis film. He sat down with Heart Breakfast, Britain's biggest commercial morning radio show, broadcasting live from Cornwall for the very first time in the station's history. And for nearly 3 hours, he was the most warm, funny, and genuinely likable version of himself he has ever put on public display. And I mean that. This was not the stiff, suited, formal William who stands next to dignitaries and says carefully worded things. This was William laughing about being late for the school run. William with a slightly hoarse voice because he'd been screaming at a football match at Istanbul 2 nights earlier. William invoking his late grandmother's authority to settle the great British scone debate once and for all. Cream first, obviously. He revealed the song he runs to on a hard day, You've Got the Love by Candy Staton, a gospel soul track from 1986 that Florence and the Machine covered so beautifully it made an entirely new generation cry in their cars. That detail alone broke the internet because it is so unexpectedly human. The future king, on a rough run, blasting Candy Staton through his earbuds. People loved it. The clip went everywhere. He talked about Charlotte's full-blown Taylor Swift obsession, and yes, that landed exactly the way you'd expect in the current cultural climate, because Taylor Swift's grip on the world is still absolute, and now we know the Princess of Wales is fully in the heiress era. He accidentally let slip that George is now boarding at Lambrook, a detail royal correspondents immediately clocked and filed, because information about the Wales children's education is usually guarded like state secrets. He laughed about Louis leaving jam fingerprints all over the backseat of the car, like it was the most relatable, chaotic, perfectly normal dad thing in the world. And Catherine. He talked about Catherine in a way that was so plainly sincere it cut through every layer of royal polish. He said she is an amazing mom, an amazing wife, and quote, literally our family couldn't cope without her. This is a woman who has spent the last year navigating a cancer diagnosis in one of the most scrutinized families on the planet, and the man who has watched all of it up close just told 4 million people she is the load-bearing wall of their entire life together. That is not press office language. That is a husband who means it. He named George, Charlotte, Louis, Catherine, the late Queen, with warmth and ease and real affection. He talked about the school run, the backseat fingerprints, the Taylor Swift concerts, the cream first scones, the Istanbul win, the grandmother who taught him everything about duty. He named one absent person. And here is where the script flips. Because the people he did not name are the exact 4 people that 3 serious biographers have spent the last 6 months telling us he intends to make significantly less royal the moment he is king.
Now, before we go any further, let's establish why this particular radio appearance carries the weight that it does. Because some people are going to say, it's just a morning show. You're reading too much into it. No, here's why that argument doesn't hold. Heart Breakfast is not a quiet corner of British radio. It pulls roughly 4.3 million listeners weekly across its flagship slot. The full Heart network reaches around 12.5 million. This was broadcast on the eve of a bank holiday weekend, which in Britain means everyone is off work, everyone is listening, everyone is paying attention. Everyone at Kensington Palace who manages William's schedule knew exactly how many ears were tuned in. They chose this slot, they chose this format, they chose this cafe, this island, this bank holiday Friday morning, deliberately. And William, a man who has been trained since childhood by one of the greatest institutional communicators in modern history, the late Queen Elizabeth II herself, does not show up to a 4 million listener national broadcast and wing it. Think about what he did say. He named his wife. He named all 3 of his children with specific, personal, intimate details. He named his late grandmother. He referenced his parents bringing him to the Scilly Isles as a boy. The Wales family, named, photographed, accounted for, fully present. The Sussex family, the other half of his late mother's children, invisible. 3 royal biographers working independently across 6 months of reporting have all arrived at the same conclusion about that silence. Tom Bower, Tom Sykes, Andrew Lownie. 3 separate publishing houses, 3 separate sets of sources. And when you line up what they've written against what happened on that radio show last Friday, the pattern is not subtle.
Let's start with Tom Bower, because if you want to understand the weight of what he's putting on the record, you need to understand who Tom Bower is. This is not a man who writes celebrity gossip. He is the investigative biographer who spent nearly 50 years going after the rich and powerful with a forensic level of sourcing that has survived legal challenge after legal challenge. His Robert Maxwell book put a publishing empire's finances on trial. His Bernie Ecclestone book reshaped accountability in Formula One. When Tom Bower writes something about a powerful person, that person's lawyers read it very carefully, and if it were wrong, they would say so in court. His new book, Betrayal, published in March this year by Bonnier Books, is the long-awaited follow-up to his 2022 book, Revenge, which was already a bombshell. Betrayal contains one chapter about William and Harry. One chapter. And it may be the most consequential thing written about the British monarchy this entire year. Bower writes that once William is crowned, he may show his brother no mercy. He may strip Archie and Lilibet of their titles. That sentence comes from a man whose sources include serving and former senior aides to both the King and the Prince of Wales. But here's the detail that made me stop and reread it twice. Bower gives us the exact moment William reportedly made his decision. Not after Spare, not after the Netflix documentary, not after Oprah. 3 years ago, the afternoon Harry was excluded from the pre-funeral reception for the late Queen, a gathering of 1,000 people. William reportedly decided that same afternoon that he would not be inviting his brother to his eventual coronation. Think about what that means. Everything that came after, every interview, every documentary, every carefully managed public statement from the Sussex camp, has been operating inside a decision that was already made. Harry and Meghan have spent 3 years playing chess against a man who already flipped the board. Bower also documents what senior palace insiders reportedly believe is at the root of all of this: Queen Camilla. According to a known palace insider recorded in the book, reportedly said that the Duchess of Sussex had brainwashed Harry. That is Camilla's reported language, documented in a published, distributed, actively selling book, and the palace has not taken it to court.
Now let's talk about Tom Sykes and the column that broke the internet last November, even if most people outside of royal-obsessed circles didn't fully clock what it meant at the time. Sykes is a veteran royal correspondent for the Daily Beast, who has been covering this family for the better part of 2 decades. On the 8th of November last year, he published a column under a headline that deserves to be read slowly. Prince William plots bonfire of royal titles when he becomes king. Bonfire of royal titles. According to Sykes, William has decided to use letters patent, a specific centuries-old legal mechanism by which the sovereign can alter royal titles without going through Parliament, to strip every non-working royal of their HRH and their princely or duchess titles in the early weeks of his reign. Not 1 or 2 people, every single one. The column names them: Prince Andrew, Sarah Ferguson, Princess Beatrice, Princess Eugenie, Prince Harry, his wife, and even Archie and Lilibet, children who had nothing to do with any of this. Now, royal correspondents float trial balloons all the time. That is part of the job. But here is where this one became impossible to dismiss. Buckingham Palace said nothing. Kensington Palace said nothing. Tom Sykes was not sued. The column was never pulled, never corrected. It sat there, and it is still sitting there, completely unchallenged. And then came the detail that quietly changed everything. 3 weeks before Sykes even published that column, King Charles had already quietly stripped Prince Andrew of his HRH and princely titles through letters patent. The exact mechanism Sykes described wasn't theoretical. It had already been tested on the most senior family member it could possibly be applied to. Andrew, the king's own brother, the man Charles had once reportedly promised his mother he would protect. The mechanism worked. The precedent was set. Then, just 6 days before William's heart breakfast appearance, Sykes published a second column, this one about Project Thor, the rumored back-channel reconciliation between Charles and Harry. Sykes, who had been skeptical, wrote that coordinated messaging now coming out of both Harry's office and the King's office had pushed the story from speculation into something verifiable. 2 offices coordinating, and William, the third office in this story, completely silent, not a whisper.
The third biographer is Andrew Lownie, a historian who has spent 20 years documenting the lesser royals, the ones who never make the official Christmas card, the ones the institution would rather you forgot about. His book entitled, published last November, focused largely on Prince Andrew, but carried a long second half on the wider succession. When Lownie was asked straight up, no caveats, no diplomatic hedging, what William would do with Andrew and Harry when he becomes king, His answer was blunt. William will probably remove both of them in the same legal motion. 2 non-working royals, 1 letters patent, done. And in a follow-up interview, Lownie went further, saying William's view is, we're becoming irrelevant. The we he's referring to is the institution itself, the monarchy, the thing William will one day inherit and is apparently already watching get dragged into disrepute by the very relatives he refused to name on the radio. And then there's Roya Nikhaw. If you don't know that name, here's why it matters. Nikhaw is the royal editor of the Sunday Times and is widely understood across the entire Westminster and Palace press corps to be the journalist that senior royals trust most when they want something said carefully, on the record, but with just enough distance to maintain deniability. When she speaks about this family, she is not editorializing. She is reporting what she has been told by people inside the building. What Nikhaw said about William in a Times radio segment is worth hearing slowly. She described him as someone who holds a grudge, who chooses sides, and who, if someone picks the other side, remembers. Specifically, she said he remembers Oprah. That interview, years later, still sitting in the room every time reconciliation comes up, like an uninvited guest that never leaves. He remembers.
Now, picture the royal chessboard right now, because it is not a simple board with one king making all the moves. It is a board with 2 kings, moving in completely opposite directions. On one side, Charles, a man dealing with a cancer diagnosis that is serious enough that it has changed the public calculus around everything, including succession timelines. And whatever you think of his parenting choices over the years, and there is a lot to think about, what is clear is that this is a father who wants his son back. His deputy private secretary, Theo Rycroft, a former British embassy deputy head of mission in Paris, brought in specifically for sensitive assignments, has been openly named by senior correspondents as the architect of Project Thor. Rycroft reportedly told colleagues the family situation had reached a point where it was, in his words, time to knock their heads together. His communications secretary met Harry's chief of staff at the Royal Overseas League last summer. 2 offices, quiet meetings, careful messaging. And then came the moment that made people pay very close attention. On the same day the king visited Golders Green to meet 2 Jewish men targeted in an anti-Semitic attack, Harry's essay on anti-Semitism appeared in the New Statesman. Same day, both offices reportedly in the picture. Sykes called the Sussex office to ask if the timing was coordinated. They denied it, but confirmed the piece had gone to print several days earlier. That does not rule out coordination. It just explains the... Now here is the piece of this story that does not get nearly enough attention, but which explains why the title question matters so much more than it might seem on the surface. A royal title is not just prestige. It is a brand asset. It is the thing that makes a Netflix deal worth signing, a Spotify deal worth pitching, a charity worth donating to, a product worth attaching your name to. Strip the title, and you strip the asset. Bauer sourcing indicates the Sussexes need roughly $3 million a year just to maintain their current lifestyle and operations. And on every front, the Netflix content, the Spotify deal that famously collapsed, the retail ventures, the income, in Bauer's words, is drying up. The Netflix deal that was supposed to be the foundation of their American reinvention has not delivered the volume of content that would justify a renewal at its original scale. The Archwell Foundation has faced scrutiny over how its funds are structured, and the speaking circuit, while still active, is not the same without the gravitational pull of active royal status. Without the HRH, without the Duke and Duchess titles, the brand proposition changes fundamentally. Which is why, and this is significant, Meghan is reportedly threatening legal action if titles are removed. That is not a bluff designed to protect feelings. That is a financial defensive play. And here is the detail. So let's bring it all back to that cafe on the Isles of Scilly last Friday morning. Because here is the thing about the British royal institution that Americans sometimes underestimate. It has never communicated through press releases. It communicates through signals, through gestures, through the things that are conspicuously, deliberately, architecturally absent. The grandmother stopped wearing a particular brooch. The father did not send an invitation.
The Queen stepped out of the Abbey to bow to a coffin and broke centuries of protocol in one single silent gesture that the whole world understood without a single word being spoken. The brother does not say the name on Heart Breakfast. That is how this institution has always delivered its verdicts. Not through announcements, through absences. And this family has never made unintentional gestures on 4 million listener national broadcasts. The last time William and Harry appeared together in public without visible tension between them, they were 2 boys in dark suits, walking behind their mother's coffin through the streets of London. A moment the whole world watched and felt and has never fully let go of. The woman in that coffin was the mother of both of them. They shared that loss. They shared those corridors. They shared the same blood and the same grief and the same impossible inheritance. And the only absent person William named on Friday, with ease.
So here is the question I need you to bring to the comments right now. Was that silence a kindness? Was William deliberately protecting something that might still be salvageable behind closed doors, while Project Thor quietly does its work? Or was it the verdict, final, public, delivered with a smile to 4 million people, with 3 biographers already in print to tell you exactly what it means? Drop your answer below. This community brings the sharpest royal analysis I have seen anywhere in this comment section, and this conversation deserves every voice it can get. If this broke something open for you, hit the like button. It genuinely directly changes how many people this video reaches, and the people it reaches care deeply about how power actually moves inside this family. Share it with your most royal-obsessed friend. You know exactly who that is. And if you are not subscribed yet, now is the moment, because the next video goes deeper into the legal machinery. We're walking through what letters patent actually do in constitutional terms, what they cannot do without Parliament's involvement, and what the historical precedents tell us about how monarchs have used them before, and what the fallout looked like every single time. This is not a story that resolves in one news cycle. It is a slow, sourced, legally specific process that has already begun. And you will want to understand exactly how it works before the morning it becomes the headline you wake up to. See you in the next one, where the silences get read with the same care as the speeches, and the names that don't get said carry the heaviest part of the story.